Hello, everybody. This is Founder Laren, and I'm here with some special guests today. I have Gavin of Necromatic Gnome, and then I have Necrotic, Necrotic Gnome. I'm sorry.
You lasted 5 seconds.
Boo.
Yeah.
And then I'm also
smooth until then.
then also I'm here with Bane. So we are going to be discussing the Old School Essentials, which is a kind of a basic rule set / D&D derivative, I guess you can kind of say, or based on the old school. And then
this is based on the old D&D rules from the 80s.
Okay. And then we're going to show this in Fantasy Grounds. So if you guys are interested in the rule set, you can play this in the virtual tabletop format in Fantasy Grounds. It's available on the Forge. We'll put the links for that at the end of the show. So we're in for a treat. We're going to start with a little history, then we're going to go into the actual rule set, and then at the end we will answer questions and or show off a couple other things and do some plugs and such. So that's pretty much the format. So I'm going to start off with introducing myself really quick. So I'm just one of the members of the Fantasy Grounds Academy. We do these kinds of workshops and shows occasionally to feature things that are being created by the community, and I felt that it's very important that we get this information out because a lot of these guys put in a lot of work and they put a lot of time into these and they don't really see the light of day. So I think this is one great way to connect the community with the developers and the publishers, and it's kind of an important part of this relationship that we have with each other. So I'm going to start with you, Gavin. Can you just give me a real quick, brief kind of rundown of what your experience is with role-playing games and kind of what got you going on this path?
Yeah, I mean, I started playing in the 80s as a kid. I got the red box for Christmas in 1984. Kind of played that for, 5-6 years until AD&D 2nd edition came out. Then I got into 2E for a while, then kind of had a break from role-playing for a while, as is pretty common in the 20s. And then just kind of found my old books one day when I was around 30, got back into it. And I think at the time 4E had just come out, so I played a few sessions of that. But it somehow wasn't really the same as what I remembered, from the kind of older editions. Just felt very different, more sort of action combat kind of oriented. So I started searching around online, reading about old school editions again, and found the kind of nascent OSR scene. This was around 2009. And then, just from there, just got back into the old basic D&D rules, and basically never looked back from there.
Right. What about Fantasy Grounds? What was that like for you?
Before Bane contacted me, I'd had no experience of Fantasy Grounds whatsoever. So I'm very traditional, pretty much I've just played face-to-face games. I've run a few games online, but pretty much just using video and rolling physical dice and having physical paper. Seeing an actual kind of fully featured VTT is quite a kind of alien world to me. It's been awesome, seeing what's possible, on this other side of things.
Yeah, this is really helpful, especially with in light of all the different things that's going on. So that brings me to Bane. So, Bane, what's your experience like?
Well, it's funny because Gavin and I are probably about the same age, and mine's almost mirror to his, except for
right.
except for I was poor, so I didn't even know it was called the Red Box. I found one of the books at a used bookstore, and that's what we played Dungeons and Dragons with. And I always knew it as Dungeons and Dragons, and so I didn't play for probably 30 years. I graduated high school and I never played 2E. I went in the Navy, and I came back to it recently. Probably about a year and a half ago, and started playing 5E, and I'm like, this is not the game I remember. This is not Dungeons and Dragons. So I started playing 2E, and that was kind of similar. And then Shotgun Jolly and I, we decided we were going to do these rule sets, right? And this is kind of funny. If he was here, he would tell you. I said, hey, you should work on this game, Old School Essentials. I think it's kind of popular. I had no idea really what the game was about. And so he started working on it, and then I started working on it, and then I realized this is my game. And so like right. he got so mad at me because I just shoved him out of the way, and I was like, I got to do this. This is my game. And
this is your mythical red book.
Yeah, this is where I found it. I found it, right? And so that's kind of my story and how I ended up here. And too bad Jolly's not here. He's working for everybody that's concerned, but he sends his regards. So
great. So that's cool. You guys kind of met through the hobby and, very common background. So mine is very similar to you guys's. So, I understand I started around the same time, I think 81, 82. So the rule set is basically all encoded into the Fantasy Grounds Unity platform. Did you guys have a classic component before?
It's funny because we started off as just wanting to do a basic rule set, and then I kind of got lost in the game. Like when I kind of got excited, like, oh, this is my game, and I found the advanced book. So I did this all like without even talking to Gavin, right? Mm-hmm. I was just building. Jolly and I, our goal is just to build games for people, right? That aren't going to get built on Fantasy Grounds because people don't have thousands of dollars to pay a coder, right? And so Jolly and I, that's why we took this game on. And so we initially started with the basic rules, and then we kind of developed into the advanced rules. And about that time is when I contacted Gavin, when we realized this was actually looking pretty good, and kind of asked him, I'm like, hey, can we use your name on this? Can we call this Old School Essentials? And that's kind of how we got to that. And that's probably when Gavin got involved, when it was probably 90% done, when I first contacted him.
So, nice. Right, yeah. So from my side, like, I'd never had anything to do with Fantasy Grounds, as I said, and suddenly this guy comes along and is like, oh, hey, I've encoded your entire game in Fantasy Grounds. Let's, let's make it a real thing. So yeah, it was a kind of in at the deep end for me, trying to figure out how all this stuff works and all the terminology and so on. But amazing that Bane had done all this already, and now here it is.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's like two random guys from the internet contact the publisher. And like,
right.
hey, we're random guys on the internet. You want to do something? It's kind of hard to like. Okay, there's lots of random people on the internet, right? So that's literally kind of how it went down. So.
So what's the process been like now that you've established a kind of a relationship? Like, do you just reach out to him and say, okay, this is what we're doing next? Or, I mean, how does that process work? If I wanted to join your team, like, how would I be involved? Like, as far as, talking about the rule set and the development part of it.
I mean, basically, like from my side, when there's a new product, I would just send the PDF to Bane, and then he does some magic, and then the Fantasy Ground module appears in my inbox sometime later. I mean, you can say more about that, right? That there's other people that you're working with to develop the modules and so on.
Yeah, there's a lot of we follow the same rules that the Fantasy Ground store requires for all the graphics and everything. And Osobuho, Jimmy Namanka, Eric at FG Pug, they're the guys that are working on the modules now. And so everything that Gavin's selling on the store, those guys developed. I kind of do the review process for it. Just because I love the game, there's no monetary reward associated with this for me, but I want this to be successful because, this rule set's kind of Jolly's and ours, and, it's kind of like our baby, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And so you kind of we're protecting it, and then Gavin has a deal that he has with those guys that develop the modules where, just like they do on the Fantasy Grounds store, official store, they get a cut of whatever sells. So you're supporting Gavin, you're supporting necroticgnome, and you're supporting those guys that are doing development. And so, Gavin, he provides all the direction on what we can develop, and he determines what gets released and when it gets released. It's his product. And we just make sure that we provide him something that's up to that, Fantasy Grounds store standard. And so far, I mean, we've had nothing but really good feedback on all the stuff. So
that's
that's
great.
about it. Yeah.
So this product exists in Fantasy Grounds, but also more so in the drive-through RPG format for PDFs. Is that correct?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay.
the PDFs that Bane and crew are working from are literally what you can buy on drive-through RPG. Yeah.
Okay.
They all exist as physical books as well, of course.
Oh, that's great. I know you have a website and such, so we're going to plug that at the end and definitely get all of the links out so that anyone interested in this rule set after this video airs, if you're watching this in the future, it is November 18th, 2021. So if you come across this a year later, hopefully there's more content and more things out there for you to digest. So let's talk about the rule set a little bit. Let's move into what we can do in it, and I got a character sheet up here that is, it's actually a custom character sheet with 99% of all the things that you need right up here in the front sheet. So do you want to talk to me a little bit about this, you guys? Right now, I have
one thing I thought might be useful to mention before we get into this is the difference between the classic and the advanced rule set.
Sure.
So the Old School Essentials exists in two versions, basically. So there's the classic fantasy version, which is basically a direct clone of the basic expert rules from the 80s. And then on top of that, there's the advanced fantasy rules, which are like take the same basic rule set, but then add on loads of extra stuff inspired from AD&D. So like lots of extra classes, extra spells, monsters, magic items. So what Bane has developed is the advanced fantasy. So that's the kind of fully featured, expanded version of the game.
Right, but I'll note that it's actually compatible with both, and so you will go when we go through the character sheet. There's something on the GM side where I can click little toggles and like hide the advanced race tab and things like that, and so it actually is for the most part compatible with both. So if you which is just something to be aware of, but it definitely is completely compatible with the advanced fantasy. So, and the carcass crawler, right? So all those additional classes and things that he made in the carcass crawler that Eric developed for the Forge, they're all drag and drop, and they're all completely compatible with this rule set. We kind of go ahead.
Carcass Crawler is the Old School Essentials magazine. So there's only one issue of it so far, but Bane has converted that, and that's it's got extra classes again in it, which you can use all compatible with the rule set. Do you want to quickly mention the SRD as well?
Oh,
which is
that's right.
The like free thing that just people know that exists as well.
Yeah, that's right. So this is a free rule set. That's one thing to keep in mind. But also Altersberg, he is also a developer for things on the Fantasy Ground store, mostly D&D Classic. And he actually has a SRD that it's probably 70-80% complete. And it's free on the Forge. So if you wanted to try it out, you could download the free rule set and the free SRD. And it's got some of the basic classes that are part of the Open Gaming License, I guess is what it's called. And you could actually try out the rule set without putting any money down on it. So
so that's all the classic fantasy content.
That's right. So and Altersberg did that, and so made that available for everybody. So again, just out of the goodness of his heart.
It's great. I like it. The character sheet has pretty much very standard layout as far as in general. It's pretty close to most of the other D&D type or based rule sets. So we're going to go through a little bit of this creation process, and we'll talk about these bits as I drag and drop them over. So there is a process though that you kind of want to follow. So what should I do here now? I know this, but I want to tell the people.
So the way we designed this, the way Jolly and I designed this, is we wanted people to be able to go from 5e and experience what real BX Dungeons and Dragons was. So this almost the same process you would use for 5e. So you would do your ability scores first. There is no background, but then you would do your race, and then you would do your class, and that's it. And then you do your inventory. I mean, it's easy as that. And I think that's what most people are used to on Fantasy Grounds, and so we kind of kept that same. We wanted to make this as easy as possible for people to play. So,
That's great.
So let's try that. Yep.
Sure. So if you've never played Fantasy Grounds before, what I've done is I've opened up these banners on the right-hand side, and these are pretty much the content that I'm going to use to create the character. It's all drag and drop functionality. I don't have to do a whole lot of typing. A lot of these fields will be automatically adjusted as I add things. So I'm going to go ahead and roll the stats. So I'm going to do the 3d6 method, and then just drag and drop those from the chat area into the actual character sheet. So I'm going to do that now. So there we go. So there's 6 results, and the way that it was described to me earlier is that you just drag and drop them as they appear. So that's one method of creating stats. It depends on your game master, of course. But so I'm just going to drag and drop these into the fields that are in the ability scores. I mean, I'm taking the text and dropping them, and as I do so, it's making the calculations and it's adjusting as needed.
Yep, and so it's going to automatically update like your followers, your loyalty, any initiative bonuses, reaction bonus, your melee or missile bonus, depending on if you get a dex or strength bonus. It'll update your open doors based upon your strength score. So all that's going to be automated just based on your ability.
Nice. So I've just added the stats. I mean, if we weren't discussing it, I'd already be done and moved on to the next next
right.
thing. But yeah,
Pretty
we want to
easy.
show it. Yeah, it is very
Pretty
easy.
And all those stats could be rolled right there. So if you roll your strength, you'll see that it's going to roll the strength, and it's going to tell you want to roll below.
Yep.
Right. It's funny because I think, didn't I mess that up, Gavin? We were talking like when we first had the rule set. I think I had it backwards or something like that. Yeah, on one of the scripts. So yeah. So
cool.
Anyways, so after ability scores, next if you want to do the advanced races, you're going to do races. If your GM doesn't want you to do advanced races, if you want to try to stick with the basic game, he's got a little toggle that he sees but you don't see that can hide that little race tab. But for now, let's just show it off, and let's pick a race, and so all you do is, you can open up the race and you can look at it and you can read all about it. Like if you're used to 5e, it's exactly what you're used to, and you just take that little link and you just drop it over the race, and you'll see I think you're going to select a dwarf, right, Leyrun?
Yep.
Yep. So you'll see his census is going to populate in his Infravision, and he also gets, as a dwarf, he gets construction tricks. And so once you've done that, underneath the exploration box, there's a little magnifying glass. If you click that, you could select construction tricks to show, and you could see that it's already, once he does that, you could see that it's already selected a 2, because that's what a dwarf gets, a 2 in 6 chance. And so it automatically updates all of that.
All right, cool.
Okay. And so the next thing, like we talked about, would be classes. So you just take your class, you drag it over, and when you're absolutely certain that's the class you want, you're just going to hit the little plus button and level up.
What I like is these dialog boxes opening up so you can read. That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
And then you click this little green level up button.
That's right.
And it's rolled for my hit points at first level. So I got 5. So 4 plus 1 because my con bonus. There you go. Yep.
Right. So if you look at the front of the character sheet, like languages, that's auto-populating based on your intelligence score. For senses, we could talk about it a little bit more later, but I did some custom senses here. So there's the Infravision, which is, if you'll recognize that out of Gavin's books, right? All the races have Infravision. And that's kind of like a heat vision. And so actually Gavin and I got on the table and we looked at it, and he said that looks good to him. But there's also a vision in here for humans that's called Normal 10. And we can look at that later. But really what it does is it lets you see a token right next to you. If you've ever played Fantasy Grounds with lighting, you'll notice that whenever you put a human on a map, you can't see anything, right? But if you have if you have normal 10, you're going to be able to see basically the 5 feet around you. It's still like a black light, but you'll be able to see tokens. So it's a little more realistic if you're in a dungeon. And then also the standard dark vision with it, which is the kind of the gray vision that Fantasy Grounds has. So you can put any of those in that census block, and they work.
Nice.
So, yep.
Yeah, we'll get into that really shortly. And then now I need some items, correct?
Yep. So you just click over to your inventory tab, and whether you have Altars SRD or if you have the Advanced Fantasy Tome, it's going to have all the standard mundane items in it. The Referee's Tome is going to have all the magic items in it. And you just drag them over to your inventory and equip them, and it's going to automatically do everything as soon as you equip it. So
okay, I'm going to cheat and grab this +1 battle axe.
Okay, you're going to need it because I have something prepared for you.
I bet. And then I'm going to grab some armor. So +1 shield, +1 battle axe. Could I have it?
Pretty sweet for a first level dwarf.
Yeah, I mean, that battle axe is two-handed, but if we'll say you're pretty strong, so why not?
Yeah. But maybe I have a cursed chainmail.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
I mean, to balance things, but that's okay.
No. Yeah, you'll get destroyed.
Okay.
There you go, chainmail. All right, so then just equip those things, and then flip back over to the main tab, and you'll see that the weapon will populate, and your AC goes down to 2, right? So we got a +1 shield plus the +1 chainmail, and you can see your movement actually adjusted too, right? So you remember the base was 120, but it's all based on coin weight. Your coin mate's 550, which I believe is above 400. Is that right, Gavin? Is that I can't remember what it's coded for, but
I can't remember offhand.
Yeah. I believe it's 400.
I only use the simple encumbrance in my games, actually. There's two options.
Yeah, that's funny. I use Gavin's base rules, but Gavin uses his optional rules. So there you go. And so, that adjusted your movement based upon that. So
that's great.
And your character's done. Like that's pretty much it for your character.
That's not bad for creation, because that's, one thing that a pitfall on most role-playing games is you're spending hours creating characters. And some people enjoy that, but it's not enjoyable if you want to hurry up and play. So this is good for...
This is really one of the big pros of the older editions of D&D. The basic game, which this is based on, it's like super quick. Once you know what you're doing, creating a character, it takes 5-10 minutes and you're done. So you can get into the game much, much more quickly.
Yeah, that's great. Okay.
All right.
So I just kind of went through the other tabs. So there's an ability tab, and you were telling me earlier that if you were a rogue or a spellcaster, you'd probably use this sheet a little bit more, depending on what's going on. And then you have, of course, the inventory tab, which has your coins and your whatever you have carrying with you. And then you have your notes tab, which is all strictly just role play and notes and such. And you can list your languages and your race and age. So you have all your basics here covered. So that's great. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit before we go into actual live play, or maybe we'll save this for later. But what do you want to do next? That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Well, we could go into live play, or if you have something you want to talk about with Gavin.
Well, I wanted to show the reference manual.
I was going to say, is it worth showing one of the actual books that you've got the complete content?
So here's the Old School Essentials Advanced Fantasy Player's Tome, and on the very top up here in the library view, there is a reference manual that pops up, and this is kind of like having the PDF at your fingertips. So if you have the PDF, or if you just have one or the other, this is the equivalent to that. And as you click on these different aspects of the reference manual, you'll get pictures right out of the book. So you're able to read the content in Fantasy Grounds. Like if you're on a laptop, you have a search field on the bottom left corner, which allows you to search for something. So if you wanted to look up a goblin or something like that, or maybe something character related in this case, you have the search field. And then, of course, if you are inside the reference manual, and if it's built the correct way, you can click on the links, and you can bookmark these into your hotkeys. So if
Yes,
you
you
wanted to
can.
come back and research something, like let's say you're in the middle building a character, your wife says, "Hey, it's dinner time," and you don't want to lose where you're at, you can drag and drop those into hotkeys and recall them. So if I close the reference manual, I can bring that page back up, and there's arrows on the bottom to navigate to the next page. So I don't even have to have that other window open. I can just go straight from the shortcut. So that's one feature of virtual tabletops, namely Fantasy Grounds, that is very handy for gameplay and for keeping track of things and organization. All right. So anything else you guys want to look at?
No, and I will say that these reference manuals are complete rebuilds of the PDF. So, in 5e, you'll notice, like, especially when you get to the monsters, the monster stat blocks aren't present. So they'll just have the image and maybe like the verbal write-up. Like, I completely reproduced the PDF and the written book in here. So
including all the artwork, right?
yeah, absolutely, including every bit, every image is included. And so I will say one thing for the referee's tome. Right now, if you buy it on the Forge, it's got letter tokens. But I'm working on something right now, and I hope after the first of the year we can get color and black and white tokens for at least the vast majority of those monsters. And that's going to be included for if you've already bought it, it'll update it. And of course, in the future, it will be updated with that. So that's just something I wanted to make sure I pointed out to everybody.
Great.
We've had some questions on that. And so, yep.
Awesome. Yeah, it takes a little bit of time to get the intellectual property and the artist and all that stuff figured out. And then you got to make the tokens, and
right.
I get it. All right, so that's that. Anything else in the library or the character sheet that we want to? For building.
Like, if you're familiar with 5e, I would say then you can definitely walk into this rule set as a GM and run it. The character class, the race tabs, the spells, even there's a new update coming out when the new core RPG hits. I have it on test right now, but spell effects are fully implemented. And so you can, just like the character sheet in 5e, you'll have a little effect drop-down menu. And like, I'll show you an example. I'm going to cast Bless on Leyrun's character, and you'll see that the effects get populated on the combat tracker. And then those effects are also automated. So, attack, damage. It's not as extensive as, say, what Celestian did with 2e, but it's got attack, damage, save, AC, and then all the individual saves are also going to have their own separate effects on there.
Right.
And then we also built in the effects for the monsters. So, like, if you have a monster that's immune or resistant, it's going to, when you put that monster on the combat tracker, it's going to show you that as a GM. And so, you'll have that. You don't have to go into the notes and try to remember it or figure it out. It's actually there where you can use it as the GM to just tell you that, hey, this ghost that Leyrun's about to fight and get killed by, it's immune to poison and mundane damage. So that's just something that we added on to, that just to be helpful as you run games. Something you're used to already. We put it in the rule set. But that's all I got.
All right, Gavin, anything else?
No, I think we've covered the kind of real core stuff now.
Okay.
Let's see it in action.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to share this. I should have shared it with you ahead of time. Let me know when you can see that map.
Yep, I got it. I'm on the map.
All right, so this map is the burial mound from Winter's Daughter, which is it actually comes from Dolmenwood, and Gavin probably, I won't say anything else, but Gavin could probably tell us all about Dolmenwood. He's working on it right now, and it's a really awesome setting. I'm on his Patreon, and so I've gotten to look at some of the things. But this adventure is actually for sale on the Forge right now, and Eric Fredrickson over at he's more mainly over at FG Pug. He developed it, and he actually ran this game for me and a couple other guys, and man, it was a blast. And so we're actually in the tomb of Sir Chide right now, and so we'll just do like a simulated battle. So let me get this ape off of here. He's too easy. So just like any kind of combat and fantasy grounds, everyone's going to roll initiative. And so as a player, you roll initiative directly on the main tab. Almost all the rolls are going to be on the main tab of your. So Leiron, why don't you go ahead and roll initiative?
Okay.
It's right under encounters. And then the monsters, they have their own initiative tab. And so I'm going to roll this for that. Okay. And so, of course, the ghost gets to go first. And so so we're in the tomb of Sir Chide here, and we're not sure where the ghost of Sir Chide is. So everything works just like you would. You can either control left click to target, or I can take the dice and directly drop it, on the monster or on the player, and you'll see that he does a touch attack and he hits. And in this case, he would destroy Moon because he would do a life drain on him. So we're not gonna do that, but I'm gonna pass it to Moon. So like, let's say Moon, he's a cleric and he wants to cast a spell. And so if you watch Leiron's combat tracker, we're gonna put bless on Darug here, and you can see that in the chat box the effect is applied. And then he could also, if we're kind of not following the rules, just trying to show the rule set, but he could also apply blight to the ghost if you wanted to, and that's going to actually impact their rolls. So we're going to skip down and just Leiron ghost, because this way you can see the dice. So the ghost went and attacked Moon, and Moon somehow dodged, and Moon decided he was going to cast blessed on you, Leiron, and why don't you go try to hit this ghost here?
All right. So I move up 5 feet.
Yep. Unlock the tokens.
And then the only real attack that I have at the moment is this battle axe. So I'm going to what?
Okay, so you can do 3 things. All right, 2 things, I guess. 3 things. You can control left click and target the ghost, and then roll. And we'll actually show all 3. So go ahead and roll, because you're going to get a different shout output depending on what you do. All right. So you rolled a 1, so that's a miss. That's too bad. All right, so let's clear the target. So hit control click again, and let's clear the target. Okay, now go ahead and roll that battle axe roll again. Just double click it there, and that's damage. Go ahead and roll the attack, Leiron. There you go. All right, so you rolled a 4. So you can see it that the display message it actually tells you what AC it would hit. So that's for the DM, right? So the DM says, okay, I know the ghost's AC, and this is Thaco, right? This is using Thaco or the Matrix actually, that's present in the book. So lower AC is better, and so obviously that's not going to hit the ghost. But let's say the DM didn't want to look it up. So you can actually take that 6 Leiron and just drag it onto the ghost on the combat tracker. So, and when you do that, you'll see there's a little sword. The icon's going to change to a sword, and you can see that it'll automate it for you. So you don't even have to target, right? So the third option is you can actually just grab the die from that attack button and drop it directly on the ghost, either on the combat tracker or on the token on the map. And again, it's going to automate it for you. So, that's a lot of coding to do that. But I wanted to make it, as easy as possible. And I wanted to give people what they were used to, like that we're playing 5e or 1e or those other rule sets that are popular. So let's say you hit him, Leiron. So there's a couple different ways to drop damage. You could target him and roll, or you can roll the damage directly on the token, or you can roll the damage and drag it from the chat. And so you can pick the one you want. And there you go.
That's targeted.
So the ghost takes 8 damage with that magic battle axe. So I'll note that ghost is immune to mundane. So the GM will have to judge that, right? So if Darug here didn't have a magic battle axe, there's nothing in the code right now that'll prevent you from not damaging him, which is a little different, right? So 5e, it's actually coded in there to where if he's immune to mundane weapons, it won't allow you to do the damaging. So it's something I may go back and add later. It's just more scripting is all it is. So just something to be aware of. And so you'll notice that Dura got +2. Now I bet you got +1 from the axe, and then he also got +1 from the bless spell that's on him, right? So, and then the same thing with the damage, right? He got +1 from the axe, and then +1 from that effect. So it's pulling that effect off the combat tracker. So it's really as easy as that, you know. And then Search Eyed, he could show up, right? He could come out of his tomb, and he could probably give you a hand.
Nice.
You see his token just appeared, and
so he's neutral.
Yeah. So he's the ghost. He's one of the main characters. I guess he's a ghost, but in this adventure, and so is the I guess she's an elf princess. Is that right, Gavin?
Yeah. So it's kind of a love story between the mortal who is dead centuries ago and now is a ghost, and his elf princess betrothed who's still alive, being immortal.
Right. And so there's a couple of, there's some trolls. There's a troll in here. I recommend not attacking him. And Gavin actually changed the intro a little bit, and it actually flows a lot better now. So like, I think the original, it was almost like this deadly encounter at the very beginning.
Yeah, that's why we changed it. It was kind of a death trap at the beginning, like the first encounter. So we do, as an intro adventure, it doesn't really make sense to have such a deadly encounter right at the start. So we decided to tweak that a bit for the revised version, which is what you get here.
But I liked it because after having played all of this WotC stuff, you kind of know where these adventures go, right? But then when you play this one, you know what I'm saying, right? But when you play this, it's something unexpected happens. And we've been playing RPG games for so long. When something unexpected happens, that brings me joy, you know?
Yeah,
yes.
That's the fun, isn't it? Yeah, discovery and wonder. Yeah.
And you mentioned the damage does not necessarily have to apply, especially if it's not magic. So for me as a game master, I would probably look at that number, and obviously I'd remove it from the ghost. But the narrative of that amount of damage might be that, yes, I hit the ghost, and it kind of like split it in half, but then it just like coalesced back into its form or something like that. Instead of just saying, okay, you hit or you miss, or
Exactly. And what people see on the stream, you're seeing a box that says, like, if I put wounds on the ghost right now, you'll see, he says dead now, but like you'll see that he's, wounded or whatever, or maybe even heavy. But what the GM sees, he sees, the actual wounds, temporary hit points, the actual hit points, and that's all editable, and it's all linked to the combat tracker and the NPC sheet and all that. So it's very, very easy to do what Leiron just described. So, yeah. Yep. So anyways, I mean, that's it. I mean, that's as easy as it is, right? This is, when I play an RPG game, I'm here for the story and the narrative, and I want combat to go fast. And, I ran a playtest, Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, or I think that's what it's called. It's U1. And, we let Boffrin play, and he took a 10-foot pole, and he just basically it's like a cheat code for the game, but the whole game was Boffrin using this 10-foot pole to outdo any sort of trick or treachery that I put in front of him, and that was fun, right? Everybody had a blast, and until Boffrin tried to save, I think it was my daughter who was playing a halfling, and he ended up getting killed. So, because long story, but anyways, because it is BX, it's deadly. So, and they were level 1. So that's what I love.
This is one of the advantages as well of, one of the kind of features of Old School Essentials and basic D&D, that like combat is very quick to resolve. So it's like, your games don't get bogged down in hours and hours of combat, and you've got a lot of time left for, exploration and role playing, the like other aspects of the game. Very cool.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to show us the lighting thing, the Infravision and the
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to put you right by Moon here, and let's see. Oops, there. And what I do is I can just go over to your census here. So for lighting, there's actually effects, and so for torches and things like that, you can actually drag them from the options menu or the shortcut bar on the top right hand corner of the screen. There's the little effect shortcut bar, and so you can actually use. There's a bunch of effects I put in there. Those effects are the conditions are kind of informational, just for you to use when you're playing the game. but the lights actually do things. And so, you could drag the candle, the lantern, the torch to the player on the combat tracker. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go to your character sheet. And so right there, I just deleted your senses, and you can see that it should be black now. So one of the things I added to this rule set was normal 10. And so what normal 10 does, now later on, you tell me, you can see the token right next to you, right?
Yep.
Okay. Now, if I move him 10 feet away, can you still see him?
In this case, yes.
Oh, because I have a light there.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you'd have to kill
It's like there's 2 candles in the room or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're toast.
There we
They're
go.
gone. Okay. Can you see him now?
Nope. I can't see
All right,
anything.
so-
but
But
him
now you see him.
Yep, now I
Yeah.
do. Yep.
Okay, so if you guys have experience playing Fantasy Grounds and you drop people on a map, they're like, I can't see anything, right? Well, this kind of eliminates that. So like, you're in it's a dark dungeon, but if someone's standing right next to you, you know they're there, right? Or if it's at night, right? If it's dark outside, you can still see a foot in front of you, right? So this is a vision. So any of the humans anybody that doesn't have Infravision is going to have normal 10. And then also, this is a core RPG thing. You could do, if you don't like the way Infravision works, there's also dark vision. And so I just did dark vision 60. And so did that fix it for you? Did it turn everything kind of gray?
Yeah, it's white and black and white.
Yeah, because we're at a black and white map. But so dark vision 60 is also in the game if you don't like the kind of heat vision. Or, in my games, like I kind of like to give the heat vision to the underground races like the Drow or the Durgar or whoever. And then I kind of give the overland races like the elves like dark vision, right?
Yeah.
Like they can see in the infrared, but
Makes
the other
sense.
ones actually can have this heat vision, this infravision. So I kind of use both visions in my game, and then of course I use the normal 10. So that's just something that's unique with this. But all the lighting effects that you're used to in 5e work in this one. Like if I put a candle back on the map, let me do that real quick, and then I'll show you. There's a darkness spell. So what's my map doing? Well, my map's not playing right, but there's a darkness spell that you can actually drag it from the map, the light menu, put it on the map, and then it kind of makes the area dark, no matter if they have a vision or torch or whatever. So, but that's available in all the core RPG rule sets. So I don't necessarily need to show that. So
yeah, Thelgor says that he likes the normal 10 that mechanic.
Well, good. Yep, that's good.
That's from YouTube.
Awesome. Well, thanks. Yep. So I don't know. I guess that's it. That's all I can think of to present in the rule set.
Okay. Let's talk about maybe a couple things you guys are working on. Let's talk about where we can find this stuff, and also want to mention that we have a practice game going this Sunday that'll be aired on a different Twitch channel, but it'll be live, and that's already out on social media. So if you're interested in watching this gameplay, OSE, who's also Albert, is in Spain. That's we know him as Victor, but he's one of the developers and someone who does the conversions. He's really good DM, very detail oriented, and very talented. And then we have some really good players. I think some of the best players around going to be playing in that. And that is open for public, but I think we have enough people. But if you would like to be a backup player in case someone can't make it, we might be able to get you in. But for the most part, let's talk about some things that you're working on now, and maybe any news like that.
Well, I think that's Gavin for sure. So he should definitely tell us what he's working on.
Yes, I mean, in terms of the Fantasy Ground stuff, we've got 3 more adventures coming up, right? I don't know, soon?
Right, yeah, probably around Christmas time, but really the Dolmenwood, I think your new setting is what, and then our plans for Fantasy Ground.
Yeah, the really big thing that I'm working on personally at the moment is a setting for Old School Essentials called Dolmenwood. So this adventure that we've been looking at here, Winter's Daughter, that is kind of an intro adventure for the Dolmenwood setting. So Dolmenwood is like a kind of fairy haunted, mushroom and moss encrusted fairy tale forest. So it's kind of a like weird fairy tale kind of setting. So it kind of follows the like traditional feeling of fairy tales, where they're like, there might be kind of whimsical or sort of romantic kind of stuff, but there's also this kind of weirdness and darkness. If you think of like Grimm's fairy tales, stuff like this. So it's the campaign setting is going to be 3 books. So there's a player's book, which gives you a bunch of new classes, loads of new magic equipment, stuff like that. There's a monster book, which is like 90-something pages of new monsters for the setting. And then there's the real meat of the saying is a campaign book, which is like the kind of DM secrets part of it. So it's going to be about 400 pages probably. Loads and loads of history background, like big detailed information about all the major factions in the setting. There's like 12 settlements that are described, which each of those gets like 4 to 8 pages and a really nice map for the settlement, so you can run adventures like directly in the kind of villages and towns around Dolmenwood. And then the kind of main bulk of the content is 200 locations around the map. So the map is a hex map in the kind of traditional like overland hex crawl kind of style. So it has 200 hexes, and each of those hexes has a page of description what's in that hex. So there's a lot of content, and it's all designed with like ease of use in mind. So everything's kind of laid out, formatted, and structured. So it's really easy to kind of jump to a certain page and use the content directly, like without having to kind of read and research and memorize hundreds of pages of material in advance. So that's actually a feature of Old School Essentials in general, and of all our adventures. It's kind of ease of use.
I like
so
it.
We just want to get people to jump into the game as quickly as possible without having to read loads and loads of material in advance.
That's great. If you are a dungeon master or game master in Fantasy Grounds, you can link things back and forth to make that process faster. So you're able to connect all those pieces and just use those during your game and not get bogged down by flipping through 100 pages worth of stuff. So it lends itself to that, to that sort of format. So that's great. I kind of wish
you show a bit of the DM description of one of the areas or something to sort of demonstrate what I mean a bit there.
So what do you want me to look at?
I don't know what view we're in here, if it's possible to see.
I'm in the game view.
Notes for the adventure.
Oh yeah, so let me see. I should be able to. Yeah, so what he's talking about is how he does the notes. So this is one of my favorite parts about Old School Essentials. So I'm going to share this with you.
Okay.
Tell me if you can see if that page comes up later, Run. Okay.
I do. Yep.
So this is how he does it. So he'll do a like the stone circle, and there's not a whole lot of information, but he tells you what you need to know. He tells you about the runes. He tells you about clearing the moss, right? And then everything else, like you can remember that, right? If you have a piece of text that's 80 lines long, if you DM a game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like you can't remember all that, right?
Yep.
What you need to know is you need to be able to pick out the important aspects of the room, the door, the NPC, and this is how he organizes everything. And that's what makes run. Yeah. Oh, you could run it. You can pick this adventure up and with hardly any prep and run it.
That's kind of the aim, that like, the adventures, that the aim is that you can just read the kind of introductory sections, a few pages, the kind of background to the adventure, how the PCs are hooked into it. And then from there, you can pretty much run it without any more prep, because the area descriptions are kind of written in this way. It's very easy to pick out bits of information on the fly without having to like read and memorize big paragraphs of text.
Right. And what I love about it is if you look at some of these modern adventures, they forget, like, there's the senses, right? There's the 5 senses: what you see, what you feel, what you taste, what you could smell. But, you could hang from the trees, wings spread wide, clanking in the breeze, rusty, rain streaked, pentagram eyes graven, right? So you kind of like, if there's a smell, if there's a scent, he gives it to you right there. It's very easy. you got it, man. And you can just, you know, and your players think you're a really creative GM, you know? So
What I
go ahead.
I was going to say, what I like about that approach is like that. This is exactly what I'm missing from role playing games, especially like 5e. So I'm creating a module myself in 5e, but I'm going to be doing exactly like this because I'm inspired by the notes that are there, and I don't need to, like I said, I don't need to read 10 paragraphs to figure out what's going on. Right. And I like the. I don't know if you guys have looked at the old school Pharaoh module, but it was written that way. When you go into that, you know, that whoever, I know it's Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weiss worked on the story, but whoever did the module part, like it's done like that. So it has a trigger, a trap, you know, or it has like there's a format that you're always going to see. Now you're not always going to get all three of those things, but there was like an action, there was like a description, and then there was another note or something, and it was always like that for every room, and that really made it simple to run, and it's very clever.
Makes a big difference, eh?
Yeah, it does.
This kind of format just came from my own experiences trying to run modules written by other people. You know, if I was running an adventure that I'd written, I just have these kind of rough notes like memory jog. But you know, if you buy a module written by someone else, and you know, in the heat of play, trying to read paragraphs and paragraphs of text and figure out what's going on, like I just couldn't manage it, you know, and that's why I came up with this format.
And this really helps you come up with your own imaginative way of, you know, presenting that data or running it instead of letting someone dictate it for you.
Yeah.
Or like what my favorite is, like they want to know somebody's name, and you have to search, you know, 120 lines of text to find out a name, right? You know, he's going to have it right there. And I run a 2E adventure right now, and I'm running the Underdark campaign, and it's like that, man. It's impossible to find anything in there.
It's funny you say that because I'm making a name table that I embed on the NPCs themselves. So if I have to, I'd hit the other notes tab and roll on that table, and it gives me a random name.
Oh, that's good.
So that's kind of what something I've done to kind of help myself, and it makes the game more replayable. So that girl you meet in the tavern doesn't always have the same name. You know, she'll have a different name, which implies a different personality, so on and so forth. So it's like a writing prompt, basically, is what it is.
Well, before I forget, I wanted to just say, getting back into the Dolmenwood, one of the things I'm going to do probably as an extension for hex crawling is a turn counter, so that you can keep track of turns, and it'll try to integrate it with the calendar, so that it'll actually keep track of time of day and, you know, date even. And so you can track those things. It's more important with a hex crawl than you know, a dungeon crawl. But
I mean, so Dolmenwood has a whole kind of imaginary calendar with like different festivals and events and so on. So that's a really cool idea to integrate that directly.
So we got a question from Bang. He's asking, can you touch on the BX importer?
Oh yeah, so
yes.
Hey, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So I have an extension on the Forge. It's just called Convert 2E to Old School Essentials, and if you'll notice, a lot of the 2E content are actually B modules and X modules, and they're actually 1E games. And so what the extension does is, if you buy these WotC modules from the Fantasy Grounds store and you want to play them in Old School Essentials, the way Jolly and I did the coding was that you can open these modules in here and everything will translate except for the monsters, because a 2E monster is a little bit different than an Old School Essential monster, and plus the stats are a little bit different. So what the extension does is you can basically drag the pin or the link from the monster that's in the encounter. So you can't open the monsters, but you can open the encounters, and in the encounters you'll have the populated monsters. So you just drag that link of that monster over to the control, which is the necroticgnome, and it'll actually automatically create that Old School Essential monster for you. And it's basically using the hit dice and pulling a lot of the data from the fields that are in the database for that monster in the module that you own. and it creates it. And then you could just drag the token and flip them back on the encounter, and that encounter is already pinned with the story, and that story's pinned on the map. And you could actually do it on the fly as you're running the game. It's that fast. And so I think I might make it even easier once I get some time, to where you can just take the encounter and hit a button, and it'll automatically spit out a new encounter with Old School Essential monsters in it. I think I might go do that, but I just have to find time for that. So, but that's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to see that in action. Let's at least do a video. We don't necessarily have to do a live one, but we can film a video and go from,
cool,
and then put that out. And then if someone wants to know how to use it, you can just link it to your, to the.
I've got a YouTube video, and what I'll do is I'll send you the link. It's only a couple minutes long. I try to keep my video super short.
Perfect.
And
I'll put that in the credits.
It's cool because this is actually one of the kind of features of Old School Essentials, the game in general, outside of Fantasy Grounds. You can play old modules with it from the 70s and 80s. So it's really awesome that you can actually do that in Fantasy Grounds as well now.
Yeah, it helps a lot. If you're a game master or a developer or someone who wants to, expand their library, that's a really, really good way to do it.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, awesome.
Okay, so where can we find your product? Like, I know you have different things, different places that we can see this stuff. So obviously Fantasy Grounds Forge, but what else, or what other venues do you got?
I mean, the kind of best place to go is necroticgnome.com, or one word. Then that has the front page is a big introduction to Old School Essentials, kind of overview of it. Loads of links to free downloads. There's a whole 56-page PDF, which is a kind of sample of the game, just the basic rules. There's a link to the online rules reference. And then obviously you can kind of browse through and look at all the products, and then go to find places where you can buy the books or the PDFs, kind of thing. So necroticgnome.com is kind of the main place.
Okay.
He probably, I don't know why he won't mention it, but he has a Patreon where you can actually get access to the Dolmenwood material. So if you want to check out the Dolmenwood material, you could become his Wood Group. I think it's a Wood Group patron.
Yeah.
A lot of us have done that. And, I played Winter's Daughter and was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Give me more,
Yeah, so the Patreon is for the development of Dolmenwood, which is my big project right now, as I was saying.
Yeah, we'll put that
every month. I kind of put out new content packages.
Great.
That patrons get for free, previews from the books that I'm developing.
Great. Do they have input or voting rights on some of it?
Input, certainly, yeah. I mean, I'm always really interested to hear people's kind of feedback on stuff.
I'm just
especially
curious.
If people are using the material in the games.
Yes. Okay, so one question for you, Gavin, from me is, when are you going to start playing in Fantasy Grounds more often?
Unfortunately, I hardly have any gaming time actually at the moment.
Yeah, I figured that.
I'm very busy writing stuff, and I've got a young daughter, which takes up a lot of the time.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah,
but it is sad. Very sad that most developers don't even get to play their own games.
Right.
It's pretty sad. It's all across the board. I ask this all the time. I kind of knew what your answer would be.
Right.
But, I just feel sad that, you put all this time, dedication, and such to, keep this hobby going, but you yourself are not being able to always enjoy the fruits of your labor. So that's kind of what I'm getting at is, be nice to see you in a game and enjoying it and not running it, maybe just playing.
Right.
And just kind of seeing how it goes. Yeah, I know. I'm the same way.
I'm a
same here. I know that. I know that problem. What about you, Bane? Are you playing much anymore?
I'm trying to. So Jolly and I have we do this rule sets for the people, and so we have a group of guys that we have our own Patreon. There's 14 guys on there, and they get to pick what rule set we develop. So we've been just continuously working on rule sets, and so I have time for basically one game a week that my wife and daughter plays and some other guys play, but the rest of the time I spend coding rule sets, and what ends up happening is I figure out some new trick, and then I go back and do something else in Old School Essentials. So because this is kind of like my baby over here, and the rest are just kind of for fun. So like we're working on a Star Wars D6 right now, and then Mothership's coming up. We're going to start doing that one. So, but I have time for about one game, barely.
All right, so Jolly is just getting out of work, so he's not going to join us, but he's just letting you know that he's hamstrung on getting there. But the hardbacks, are they in stock yet? Is another question.
Right, yeah, so we've, as I said, there's two versions of the game. There's the Classic Fantasy and the Advanced Fantasy. The Classic Fantasy is in stock. The Advanced Fantasy is currently sold out, but it's been reprinted, and I heard this morning that it was shipped from Europe to the US on the 4th of November. So
any day now
comes a roll of 4d6 something amount of time for it to reach the US. I don't know. I mean, unfortunately, international shipping is just super random at the moment. So
yep, it's
on its way anyway.
That's good to know. I noticed one other thing about this. This type of gaming here is popular. It's grown. The thing I care about also as a consumer is that it's not really priced too high. So if you don't want to spend a bunch of money on this, if you get a standard license and then make some of this type of content, you're not going to be out hundreds and hundreds of dollars, generally when you go into a role-playing game. But I think that, I looked at the pricing and it looks pretty fair. It doesn't look like it's over the top. I looked at also did a little research, and I looked at the drive-through RPG, and, it's really affordable. It's not too bad. I think it's worth the money, and whoever's putting the efforts into this, should definitely be compensated. But it doesn't look like there's a big markup like in some of the other rule sets, because they have to pay artists, and they have to. I'm not saying you don't, but I'm just saying that they have to, pay a lot for top-notch editors and all this other stuff. So, I appreciate that part of it too. So I wish, honestly, I would have had this game played for my Halloween one-shot instead of my 5th edition game. It would have been a lot quicker, a lot funner, and a lot more streamlined to run something like that for Halloween, as opposed to, it took me, 2 hours or so to put together my Halloween one-shot. I think this would have taken me maybe a half an hour to an hour.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the Christmas one-shot. Winter's Daughter is all like snow and stuff, so kind of Christmassy.
Yeah, so a question that Drake has is, how old would you recommend one to use this rule set? So, I mean, kind of a, it's up to the parent, but what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the rules complexity, this game was aimed at kids in the 80s. Like, I started playing when I was 8. So I'd say 8 would be a kind of lower level, maybe 8 to 10 kind of thing would be a good kind of
10 if you're a boy, 8 if you're a girl.
Yeah.
In terms of the modules and so on, obviously it depends on what adventure you're running exactly, if it has kind of mature themes or anything like that.
Yeah. Winter's Daughter definitely is good for that age. Hall of the Blood King totally. Might be a little too much for an 8-year-old, but
it depends how you play it as well, doesn't it? Right. If the referee can tone down certain elements easily enough.
Right. And if you don't know what an evil tree baby is, then you need to play The Hole in the Oak. So that's pretty. They're pretty funny. So,
Prometheus is being a smart aleck. He said under 75 is the recommended
age. Indeed.
Under 75, above the age 8, but you have to be female if you're 8, and you have to be 10 if you're male. Because boys, our attention spans don't develop until well after 10. So
right.
So we have to have a stereotype. What do you call it? A stereotype categorized age requirement. You know, the inclusion, you probably want to avoid that sort of thing. But in reality, you would say, yeah, my 10-year-old girl is good. My 10-year-old boy is, he's okay. Like for, attention span and
Right.
non-video games and stuff. So
That's right. That's right.
All right. So, anything else you guys want to mention? I'd like to talk to you guys after.
I don't know. Well, I can think of one maybe.
Yeah. All right. That's great. This is Jim said hi. Jimmy said hi to you.
Oh, hey, Jimmy. Yep.
So yeah, that's great, you guys. Yeah, wonderful. I just wanted to reiterate that we are having a game this Sunday with this rule set. We're going to be playing Hole in the Oak. And we have our GM extraordinaire, Osho Buho, or Owlbear, if you want to look at it that way. And he'll be hosting that on his stream, but I will also make sure that I host it on Fantasy Grounds Academy stream. So, yeah, Drake takes his RDI adventuring party. I like it.
Yeah,
that could be a thing. All right, so RDI faction. Okay, so I think that's it. I think I'm going to say goodbye, and thanks everyone for joining us. This will be up on YouTube and on Twitch, and probably also on Facebook. So interface where you can. Reach out to us. I'll put the links in the description.